Hello and welcome to everyone listening. Thank you for tuning in. I'm here today with Kamal Soleimani, Dr. Kamal Soleimani, who is a historian on Middle Eastern history and has a PhD from Columbia University, has taught at different universities both in the US and the Middle East. And now I can understand you're teaching in Mexico. And we're here today to talk, in honor of the Kurdish Heritage Month of March. We're doing different talks at the Kurdish Cultural Center that are going to be available on our websites. So thank you very much for listening. And today we're going to be talking about Dr. Soleimani's recent publication of an article that connects environmentalism to Kurdish identity and nationalism in Rojhelat. And yeah, so first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Soleimani, for being here with us, talking to us.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate it a lot. It's an honor to be part of this project that is this ongoing project by the Kurdish Cultural Center. What you are doing is really valuable, and I feel honored to be invited and to be part of this. So, and talking about Kurdish environmentalism and its martyred leader, it is another level of honor for me, and I can be more enthusiastic talking about this than any other thing. So I'm really happy that I am part of this. Thank you.
That's great. No, thank you. I'm very excited to talk about your article and about Rojhelat. And yeah, so if you would like to start off telling us about environmentalism in Rojhelat and why you focus on this.
Sure. So Rojhelat is the eastern part of Kurdistan, which is under the Persian-Iranian rule. Kurds refer to the various parts of Kurdistan based on their direction, whether they are in the east or the west or the south or the north. So one of the kind of the language of resistance that is used is the very reference to the Kurdish geography, because this refusal is a daily thing, that Kurds have a claim on this geography and they want to reassert their own sovereignty in their daily use of language, of Kurdish language. So based on the international division of the world, East Kurdistan is located in the western part of, or northwestern part of Iran. So why we talk about Kurdish environmentalism and write about it? Because essentially in the last 2-3 decades, and we are specifically talking about the eastern part of Kurdistan and how Kurdish environmentalism is conceived and understood by people, and what does it mean for them when they talk. They refer about it, they refer to it, they talk about it, and they fight for it. Essentially, Kurdish environmentalism is more than just what you see about the degradation that the world is facing, what we have universally or globally. For the Kurds, because the very language that refers to Kurdistan, and this is unfortunately the case in all parts of Kurdistan, the nation states in these countries try to present or frame Kurdistan as a borderland, which essentially and Kurdish people as borderland people. This is very, very unsettling, extremely frightening to the Kurds when they are referred to. First of all, they all conscious of what happened to them after the World War I and the split of all parts of Kurdistan. But the reference to the Kurds as borderland people and to their land as the border of others is, as I said, is extremely unsettling. And it is essentially renaming these people and portraying them as a group of people that are there with the directives of the state, but their existence there is not something that doesn't have any historical meaning, or they don't have historical roots in this area. In Persian language, they have been referring to them as the protectors of the border. So this idea of the borders as kind of immemorial existence of a certain space that is related to another nation, not the Kurds. The Kurds are only there like mercenaries. So this historical political discourse about the Kurds and the Kurdish land as borderland, Kurdistan as a borderland, Kurdish people as border people, this portrayal of them as a kind of nomadic, semi-nomadic people that the state sends them and they are patriotic for another nation or another land because of their implementation, or they kind of fulfilling a mission that they have been asked to do. So this is the sense of this historical sense of environment, or the way the space reintroduced to the Kurds through their other. So essentially what we deal with in Kurdistan is the colonizing of the very land, for the Kurds to feel that their life is temporary, their existence in this region is based on this idea of the time immemorial existence of other nations, and they have been there as semi-nomadic people to serve this. And this is just one aspect of it. So by, let's say, 1990s, there was some opening in Iran, I'm sorry, with the reform, they called it reform state. So, which essentially reflected the contradiction and paradoxes of the state itself. These paradoxes and this internal division and fights among these layers of the state with each other gave an opportunity for the Kurds to come up, to write, to kind of organize. And among various organizations that they had, a major line or a major segment of these organizations and group were around the environmentalism. So environment became a major thing for them because since in the post-79, 1979 era with the revolution, Kurdistan was portrayed as a region that needs to be conquered. And the state basically referred to it as the conquer of Kurdistan or Fatih Kurdistan. So imagining the entire Kurdish land as a region that requires conquer, requires to be tamed and domesticated and brought back to the fold of the state control and power was a plan, and behind that was a religious discourse, which the idea of Fatah, again, when Mecca was conquered by Prophet Muhammad in 623, 22 or 23, I guess. So why I'm referring to this religious side of the thing, because actually just months after Khomeini returned, they declared jihad against Kurdistan. So they read these very verses in the Quran that in 90,000 mosques of Turkey were recited all these verses when they attacked Rojhelat, the other part of Kurdistan. So, which says Muhammad and his followers were compassionate among each other, but they were harsh and merciless against disbelievers. So Kurds were as religious as the rest, but in this state discourse, they were, again, so there was the issue of Kurdishness, and there was this religious discourse that justified conquering this region. And airplanes, warplanes, cannons, and all sorts of weapons that were at the disposal of the Islamic State were used against the Kurds. So with this, when they reconquered Kurdistan, East Kurdistan, they dotted the entire environment with various army garrisons, army bases. There were villages, small villages, that there were 2 army bases. And essentially, as one of these writers, not a non-Kurdish writer, his name is Iling, writes that when you go to Kurdistan, people there, they have the feeling that the entire Kurdish region is administered by an occupying army. So you have this situation, and after this, the securitization along the militarization becomes the main strategy of the state to deal with Kurdistan. So, and this is the kind of historical background of Kurdish environmentalism in the East. Yes.
Thank you. Can you then tell us about the environmentalist sort of, like, I don't know if you would refer to it as a movement, but what happens around like how Kurds use the environmentalism in their resistance, or in their way of identifying themselves as a nation that you write about?
Yes. So the environmentalism was given the very sense, or the way it's perceived in generally. So environmentalists are perceived that maybe in their discourse or rhetoric, they could be radical, but in general, politically harmless, meaning there is no violence. They are not going to pick up arms. They are not going to conduct a kind of military arms struggle. And so this, because in Kurdistan, the states have been able to remove any space for Kurdish politics. So Kurdish politics is essentially illegal, regardless of its form, regardless of its discourse, regardless of the level of the demands. whatever demands might be, or whatever way of talking about Kurds, has been historically illegal in most of these countries that are ruling Kurdistan. So one of the outcomes of this approach to the Kurdish situation has been, or the Kurdish politics has been, that Kurdish politics found the possibility of its existence to use arms, because there was no other way that you could assemble. You could group, but at the same time continue your existence. So therefore, they have to form various groups and at the same time pick up arms and resort to guerrilla warfare in a way, in order to be able to talk about the Kurdish situation, about the Kurdish condition, about the Kurdish question, and to talk even about the Kurdish language and Kurdish history. So to formulate any basic demands, even linguistic demands, you would have to resort to the arms. And so this dichotomy that the states have created, that the Kurdish question is essentially the question of security, the question of a security threat to the country, to the country's whatever, I don't know, to the country's security, to the laws, and a kind of outlaw form of, or essentially associating with terrorism, with brigandary. It has a very, very, very long history. So, and any discussion about if they could not prevent discussions about the Kurdish question or the fate of Kurdish nation, of course, the state would prefer the Kurdish question to be essentially associated with violence. Mm-hmm. So, and for the Kurds, it was not a choice. It was an imposition that the conditions kind of forced the Kurdish politics to exist only through the force of arms. So one way to deal with this dichotomy and to break this dichotomy and find a little space for the possibility of talking about the Kurds and Kurdish question was environmentalism. For some reason, I'm constantly saying Orientalism. I don't know. So environmentalism was a space that talking about the existence of plants, the existence of trees, the existence of animals, insects, and protecting them, and which is essential, which is existential, which is essentially tied to the possibility of the habitat to remain as it is. You have to talk about this. So this is extremely strong and logical and humane to have this approach to the thing. And at the same time, for the Kurds, the very threat to the environment is the threat not just in the environment as the sense of as environment per se. It was to the threat to the future of Kurdistan. Because when this environment is gone, Kurdistan becomes a futureless space. And the states have been they have treated it as a land that is conquered, that is a foreign, that is undomesticated, that is not tamed. And so their treatment of the habitat of the Kurds has not been just the way just not with the people. Even the habitat as something that could be gone, or we have to deal with it that the life of these people who are the, in a way, natural product of this environment, that the life would not be a possibility for them. So given this understanding of this kind of social aspect and political aspect of the very ecology that people have, they have grown up in it, and their life and future depended on it. They have tried to talk about it in a sense that as if it's not political. So, and their sense or their fear of a possible or a future environment for Kurdistan has been very real. And at the same time, they have felt that the treatment of Kurdish environment is a special treatment. It's not just a reckless state that doesn't care about the environment. No. And we know, even in North Kurdistan, in the Turkish side, or Kurdistan that is under Turkey, they have been intentionally, for instance, they put fire in forests, and they usually have used various pretexts of these armed groups are coming in. They use it for as a hideout and all the things. So this sense, especially in the 2000s, became a common consciousness of the Kurds. And the Kurdish environmentalists were very much able to communicate this with even illiterate people, even people who did not see any, for example, for them, the environment, it's something that just existed just the way fish, almost like a fish's feeling about the water in which a fish exists in. But the thing, so they pretty much revolutionized their idea about the environment and how it's under threat and how these threats are systematic, conscious, planned. There is a strategy behind it. And if we don't deal with it in one way or another, and do not treat every tree in Kurdistan as almost like a live human being, then we won't have Kurdistan maybe in a very, I don't know how, but there is no future for it. So this is how this thing became a popular consciousness in its true sense of the word. Yes.
No, that's so fascinating. I think it's interesting because like if I think of my own village in Kurdistan, how it also ties together with the way Kurds have been living in closer contact with nature for so many years. Like in some ways we're like an indigenous peoples too in that way. And also it really ties with the identity of Kurdistan to kind of focus on this politically too. We don't have that much time left, unfortunately. So I would like to also talk about Sharif Bajwan, who you write about in your article and focus on as like a sort of a really important figure in Kurdish history. If you can tell us about him.
Yes. Sharif Bajwan was from the city of Mariwan. And in a sense, Sharif Bajwan was the Jesus of Kurdish environment, a prophet. So it has this kind of prophetic aura about him. He was loved, he was respected, and he was by every mean looked at as a commander that is fighting. And he earned that because the things he did. So he was not the man of many words, but he was a man of a constant action. And his act was comprehensible by anyone around him. and everyone in Kurdistan. So he said, one of the things he said, that Kurdistan, for its survival needs our life. When you put yourself into fire, no one can fight you back. And this is what we do for Kurdistan. And this was the thing that he constantly did. For years, he was in constant protest for the things that unheard of in Kurdistan. Kurdistan, East Kurdistan, and many areas, other sides of Kurdistan are, religiously speaking, they are Shafi'i, which in their understanding, religious understanding, for example, dogs are dirty, that cannot be harbored at home or cannot be used as pet. But this is a person that he was, for saving a few puppies and to protest the maltreatment of dogs in Kurdistan, he walked 300 kilometers on foot. And on his way to the place that these puppies have been victims, and their mother actually, he constantly greeted by people, talked about these things. And you can think about, like maybe in the Christian tradition of St. Paul, of going around and in this traditional sense that trying to awaken people to the very miseries that the animals were going through in a culture that historically animals like dogs are considered dirty. So, and in every single area of Kurdistan, when there was a fire, which was a constant thing because the state was intentionally burning the forests of Kurdistan, he was there until he finally lost his life when he was extinguishing a wildfire in his own city. And he did many, many things. For example, hunting partridges kala, or something like this, not doves, but we have this tradition, unfortunately, in Kurdistan. He convinced many hunters. They freed all these birds. They broke their weapons, hunting guns. When there was so his city is known for this thing. When there was a boy who had the cancer, so in the very city, the teacher, like the way he did, he shaved his head, his hair, and everyone shaved his hair. So when because of this religious culture that eye for eye, and the Islamic Republic intentionally implements that, Sharif Bajwan was able, and it became a tradition in Kurdistan. Whenever there was something like someone accidentally or for whatever reason, there was a fight might have broken out. So the person who was accused for homicide or whatever thing, he would intervene to prevent the person's execution, to convince the families, which he was able to do many of this. So he created an environment in a town when women were humiliated, and the state forces used kind of condescending language about Kurdish women. Many Kurdish men start wearing women's outfit. I mean, you can go on and on about the influence, these visible, tangible influence that Sharif Bajwan had. And that's why when he died, in his commemoration, you see thousands or at least hundreds of letters, poems, statements, condolence statements. You can see that as if trees are talking, as if plants are talking, flowers are talking. So the Kurdish environment becomes extreme, as if almost like all these people are poets, or somehow they they are experts of botany or whatever. So even the language changed, the Kurdish language. So he really revolutionized Kurdish nationalism qualitatively and radically, in a way that environment, human and environment inseparability, as I said, became the common consciousness. So that's why Bajwar is a very big hero in Kurdish imagination, in the Kurdish imagination.
Thank you. I'm really sorry we have to end it here, but we're running out of time. But I think it was a great note to end on, and an encouragement for everyone to learn more about Kurdish history, reading your articles, other articles, doing research on our history. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you very much. It was an honor, Sarah.
Yeah,
Appreciate
and thank you to everyone else for listening. There's going to be more talks and podcasts available on our website this month.